Hello, welcome to Lori Krein's Art Studio. I'm so glad that you could join us today. We're going to be doing some really fun projects, or one really fun project. So I'm glad that you're here. And before we get started with the project, I want to remind you that you can visit my website, which is lorikreinstudios.com, to find out information about the show, about projects and classes that I teach in the San Jose area from my studio. So I hope that you'll do that. And I also wanted to thank Denise at Fusion Hair Studios in Willow Glen for doing my hair and makeup. Thank you, Denise. And their website will be on the credits at the end of the show. So let's see. This is an eco-friendly art show, as you probably already know if you've ever seen it before. And people are always asking me, what does that mean to be an eco-friendly artist? Do I use eco-friendly paints, eco-friendly glues, whatever? Well, for me, it's not really about that. It's about using materials that I find that I can reuse to make art. And the last show I talked about the piece behind me, which is a backdrop that I just made recently out of all recycled materials, cardboard boxes, styrofoam, old ceiling tiles, old wallpaper, things like that. So I wanted to give you a few more examples of items that can be made using recycled or upcycled materials. For example, there are places that will create wallets from old tires. That's an example of upcycling. Creating lawn furniture from old pallets and creating chairs from campaign signs. So they're repurposing one item and making something else out of it. So I'm repurposing cardboard boxes and making art out of it, for example. So, excuse me. So one of the things I use is these handmade papers, and they are made all over the world. Especially, there's a particular paper I like to use that's made in Nepal. And the reason that that paper is environmentally friendly is that they just chop off the leaves of this bush that's called the Daphne papyracea. I don't know how to say it right. And they're found in the forest of Nepal, and they have so many metric tons of this green lactum raw material available that the farmers allow the plants to regrow before they chop them down again, and it holds the soil in the side of the hills so that it doesn't erode. And then they make money, so because people like me buy it. So it's a really great way to use to reuse those plants. The production doesn't affect the fragile forest ecology of Nepal. I also use scrap pieces of wood, old doors, old pieces of plexiglass instead of always using a canvas. And also old furniture and vases can be used for decoupage projects. I also make handmade paper sometimes, and I use old junk mail, old wrapping paper, old homework even, to make the handmade paper, and I put it in a blender and mix it up with some glue, and then I can make it out of that. I also use dryer lint and some sawdust. Dryer lint works really well to give it some fiber. And I also use rusty washers and old jewelry that I find at yard sales to make assemblage. And I wanted to also share with you some of the places where I shop besides our yard sales and estate sales. In San Jose, there's a store called Savers, and they have a lot of really good stuff there. Of course, there's Goodwill, the Salvation Army, Scrap up in San Francisco. There's a place called Fabmo, and that's just a once-a-month event where you can go and gather together some materials, scrap wallpaper, scrap fabrics, and things like that. Then there's Resource Area for Teaching, Raft. That's another local place that takes recycled materials from companies and reuses them. And they're going to be a guest on the show in the future, so you'll be able to learn more about them. So there's so many different resources in this area that are using recycled materials. It's really amazing. So I'm glad to be sharing that with you. So today, that's my eco-friendly spiel for the day, is the different resources available around here. And today's creativity tip is if you want to kind of keep your creative juices flowing, one way to do it is to get an old spiral notebook. Let's say your kids used one for school, they only used 20 pages, and now you have half of an empty notebook. So if you could use that, or a sketch pad of watercolor paper. And every day pick a theme. And you can go online and there's classes that you can do this with, but pick a theme, color, patterns, food, a word like peace or hope or love, and just choose that word and do a one-page collage, even if it's just this size, that focuses on that word or that thought or that idea. And it doesn't have to fill up the whole page. Just go through magazines and cut out some pictures really fast and fill up that page, and it'll just give you something to look forward to every day, maybe just half an hour. You can work on that. Okay, so let's get on to today's project. Today's project is going to be about image transferring. And I recently learned how to use this technique, and it really adds a nice layering process to your collage techniques. So what you're going to need to do this project is a canvas like this. You can use an old plastic box frame, which is what this is. You can use a piece of wood, which I have back there, but you can use anything that's a hard, solid backing or canvas. You want to get some images that are cut out of magazines. For example, I have a castle here, I have legs, I have a girl, even some words that you might have found that look interesting. This one says, they fell madly in love, guaranteed for life. So find a little phrase that kind of inspires you, think that sounds kind of interesting, that you might want to use on your collage. You need some gel medium. I use matte gel medium. This one happens to be by Liquitex, but all different kinds of people make it. And that's to do the image transfer. That's just one way to do image transfer. For this project, I also used modeling paste. And this is just a very heavy-bodied gel that you can use to make some really interesting textured look on your collage. Then you need a spoon to rub when you do your image transfer and some paint for the background. So I'm going to show you first what an example of a finished piece might look like that uses image transfer. And this one has quite a few layers on it, and I'm going to show you how to do all these if we have time. In the background, there's a very subtle, you can see it's kind of black and white words. This is an old catalog that I used, and I image transferred that onto this plastic box frame first. And of course it's upside down, or it's backwards, because when you do image transfer it comes out backwards. There are ways to make it come out the right way, but I'll talk about that later. So it has the old catalog in the background, and then on top of that I put the modeling paste, and I made some textures in there. On top of that I painted the textured background once it dried, and then I pasted on this dress, and I cut out a picture of this lady who looked kind of happy. I cut out a different pair of legs. I put that together. I put the words savor and interlude of joy on the top. And that's what I did, and that's what I'm going to show you how to do that today, something like this. Of course, it's not going to be exactly the same, but it'll use the same techniques. Okay, so put that aside. So today, the first thing you're going to do is you have your blank canvas. So the first thing you want to do is you want to put here, actually I think I'm going to go over to this one first, sorry. There's different ways to do this. You're going to end up with a layer. You can put paint first and then layer your image transfer. You can do it the other way around. For this piece, I painted on the background first, and I'm going to show you how to do that in a minute. I let that dry, and then I did an image transfer. The image transfer, you put some matte gel down on the canvas after it dries. Then you put down, this happens to be an old dictionary, a page from an old dictionary. You smooth it all down and then you let it dry overnight. The next day you come back, and I already have this halfway finished because I wanted to see what it looks like. So what you're going to be doing is after it dries, to get the image transfer technique, first you have to cover it with water. This is just water, getting the dictionary page really wet. Soak it. The longer you soak it, the easier it will be for you to peel this off. So I'm just going to rub for a minute and you'll see what happens. It's like magic. So you keep rubbing like this, you keep adding more water and you keep rubbing, and eventually all the paper is going to come off on the back. And what you're left with, after you rub off all that paper, what you're left with is the other side of the page. And there's no white paper, it's just the ink. It's really fascinating. So you just have the words. Now, of course, you can see a very fine, definition of the page here. There's just a tiny bit of paper left, but mostly it's just the ink, and it looks so cool, I think. I just love this technique. Clean up a little bit here. Okay, so that's that's one way to do an image transfer, is to do the gel medium, put your piece down, let it dry, rub off with water the excess paper on the back, and you're left with this transparent image. It's so cool. So that's, now I want to show you how to get let me bring this other piece back out here. The first piece I showed you had these really cool little texturing areas in it. It's like 3D, and I use the modeling paste for that, and that gives it a really cool 3D effect. So I'm going to show you how to do that as well. So what I'm going to do is take my modeling paste, which is really heavy, but it's really cool stuff, and you just dip your palette knife. Hold on a second. Excuse me. Sorry, I'm going to use I'm going to use this plastic box frame instead of that big one. So you just take your modeling paste and you wipe it on your surface. And then you can make little lines. You can take, just to give it some kind of make little swirlies. And that gives it some texture that you can use later on when you fill it in. You can just make whatever. And then smooth it over a little bit. That's all there is to it. Now, if you want, you can let that dry and then paint over it, and it'll look really cool that way too. Or if you want, you can mix your paint right in here. And also, that looks cool too. So you mix your paint with it. And you give it a little texturing. Kind of just play around with it a little bit. And you can still paint over it some more later to give it a more antique-y look. Now it doesn't look that great at the moment, right? Let's face it, but once you start putting it all together, it'll look really cool. So that's just your basic layering down there, the modeling paste. Okay. I want to do a little of that. So that's how the modeling paste works. Now when I did my piece over here, I let it dry and then I put the paint on top of it. So that's how I got that effect. Now I want to show you how to get that kind of wash, I call it a wash look, to the canvas. So what you do is you take your acrylic paint, and here I've got the 2 shades of sort of brown and ochre. Let's see, it's actually yellow ochre and raw sienna. Those are the 2 colors I'm using. Let me move that out of the way. So I'm just going to blot some paint on here. I'm just going to show you this kind of little corner, because this is a process that really takes kind of a long time to do. And I'm just dipping a little water in there to make it easier to spread. It took me about an hour to actually do the other piece, to get it the right shade that I wanted it. So you have to be really patient with this. And then you grab your paper towel and you just start dabbing at it and rubbing it a little bit. And of course you're going to be doing this on the whole piece, not just on the one side. But the idea is you want to give it kind of an antique-y look. So you have to kind of keep working it and keep rubbing it, and you might want to do a little bit, and then you add some more paint, and you just kind of dab it on there. I'm going to use my brush. And you want the paint, you want to be able to spread the paint out, so you lose the water, but you don't want to make it too wet. and like on the edges, because if you make it too wet on the edges, you're not going to get that really cool antique look. In the middle, you want it to be kind of more subtle, so you can use more water. But on the edges, you want to not use as much water. So once I get that on there, then I'm just kind of doing this wash. It's just a wash, just to give it a subtle background. So I do that across the whole thing. And then on the edges, you want to make the edges a little bit darker. So you keep working it. I'm going to use a little bit more of the darker raw sienna. It's kind of a brownish. And on the other piece, I also used a couple of shades of red and some orange, I think. So you just go around the whole thing and just dab a little paint on there, like that. And then you kind of take your paper towel, turn it. So you get the idea? It's starting to get a little bit more antique-y looking. The important thing is blend, 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 blend. That's the secret. Okay, there. So I kind of have a pretty good start here with my background. And so depending on what color you want to use, you can use any color to do this. I kind of like this brown, light brown ochre kind of color. I just think it makes it look kind of antique-y. All right, so the next thing we want to do is add, I'm going to come back to this because after you do your background, like I said, then you're going to put the dictionary page, or the phone book, page from the phone book, whatever, and do the image transfer right on here. And since I've already done that on this piece, I'm going to continue working on this one. So I really need to get rid of the rest of my dictionary page. So I'm just going to smear that with a little more water and let that soak in for a sec, and then just rub it off. I could also leave it on there. I mean, it's not going to really harm anything. You don't have to rub off all of your paper, but I just think I want to. There you go. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is start doing my image, another layer of image transfer on top of this. So what I've chosen, this is my design. I'm going to lay out my design. So I have this castle that I found, and I found this really cool looking woman, and she has legs. Where's her legs? Here they are. So I found her these long legs, which I think I like. So I'm just going to put her kind of on top of this background of a castle here. And she's just kind of hanging out there. Maybe she's a tourist. I don't really know. So I'm going to do something like that. And then I have the words that say guaranteed for life, and I'm going to put that at the bottom. And let's see. And then I have these little circles that I found that I kind of like. So I'm going to just put those on the bottom too, just to give it another element of surprise. So the next thing I have to do is do the image transfer. Now, I take my matte gel, my matte gel. So I take my pieces and to wipe off my brush, make sure it's dry. So I take my gel, actually I'm going to use a smaller brush, I think it'll be easier. So I'm going to put the gel on top of the image. Just cover it up. Now I'm not going to be able to show you the whole technique here because it has to dry overnight before you can rub off the back. But I wanted to give you an idea of how it works. So you put that on, and you take your image and you flop it upside down and rub. Okay, so I'm kind of working blind here because I can't see what I'm doing. I can't see the bottom of it, but that's okay. And you know, on these pieces here, I'm just going to put the gel right there on the canvas. Flip this one over. That one should be fine. Okay, now I have these words here that say guaranteed for life. Now I want those words to show like that. I don't want them to be backwards. So how am I going to do that? I can either just glue them straight on and then cover them with gel medium. The other option is I can use some packing tape, a clear packing tape. And I've done that here. And I used a pattern. I think it's easier to see if I stick it on here. I'm not sure. But it's a simplicity pattern. And I just cut out the word simplicity. I put a piece of packing tape, clear packing tape on top of it. And I rubbed it with the back of a spoon really hard. And then I did the same thing. I soaked it in water, rubbed off all the extra paper, and then I got this clear transfer of the word simplicity. And I'm just going to glue that onto my collage right here at the top, just like I would any other piece of my collage. So I put my gel medium down. I put my simplicity right there. And I put some gel on top. And that's it. It looks really good. Now the piece on the bottom, I'm just going to glue it right down, right on the canvas. And what I'm going to do for this is I'm going to put another coat of gel on top to seal it. Because what's happened, now you don't want to put any gel on top of the one that you're doing the image transfer, because if you do that, you won't be able to rub the paper off. So you just put the gel underneath, and then rub it with your finger, let it dry, and then soak it with water and rub off the paper. If you're going to leave it like this, then you can put gel underneath and on top, because that'll protect it from getting messed up. So that's kind of the basic technique. Now, when I rub this off, I'm going to have a pair of legs here, and I'm going to have this woman at the top, and I'm going to have my castle in the background, and I have my dictionary page. So I'm going to have all these layers that are going to show up on my piece, and that's what kind of makes it fun. You want it to be whimsical. You want to find a nice little phrase that you think is would be a fun topic to make your collage around. So I found this other one that says, "They fell madly in love." And I got this out of a book, and I think that if I use this with another collage with maybe a guy and a girl, and I don't really know, I haven't done it yet, but I think it's just it gives me a lot of ideas. So that's kind of what you want to shoot for, is you want to find some words that inspire you, and you think, oh wow, I could do a lot with that. They fell madly in love. Well, maybe these two people, I could build a whole story around it. So I wanted to share with you the layering techniques. of how to do the image transfer, because you have this nice background now with the transparent words underneath it. And it's just really fun to work with and experiment with. The other way that you can do image transfer is by using Elmer's, it's called Squeeze and Caulk. And I forgot to bring it with me, so I can't show it to you, but they sell it at Ace Hardware Store and maybe Home Depot. And you can use that the same way underneath and do an image transfer technique with the Squeeze and Caulk. There's a lot of other techniques that you can do for your background as well. One of them, in addition to this wash technique, and in addition to the modeling paste that we did, you can use Scotch masking tape, put masking tape down, seal it with the matte gel, the gel medium, and then paint on top of it, and it gives you a really interesting texture. And another show I'm just going to dedicate to doing backgrounds, because you could just spend all day messing around with the background of your piece and come up with some really great techniques. Another one that I used recently was Elmer's glue. Put Elmer's glue on, you put some paint on top of it, and it cracks and when it dries. So you have this kind of really nice crackle finish in the background. So there's just no end to what we can do with our collage techniques. And I hope that you learned something from today's show, and you'll give it a try. And if you do decide to try any of the projects that we do on the show, I encourage you to send them to me. My website is LoriKreinStudios.com. I'd love to see what you're all working on, and I want to share it with other people if that's okay with you. And if you have any ideas for the show or projects that you've worked on, send them to me. And if you're interested in being a guest on the show, I'd love to have you. We do anything that has to do with recycled art would qualify. So I hope that you'll send me your comments and your ideas and your suggestions and what you've been working on, so we can share it with everybody else and inspire each other. What else do I want to tell you? Just to keep your eyes and ears open for using recycled materials as much as you can. And once again, thank you to Denise at Fusion Hair Studios for doing my hair and makeup. And if you're interested in sponsoring the show, please contact me. And I'd love to, we're always looking for sponsors of the show. So I want to thank you for joining me today. And I hope that you'll find ways to, and I want to thank our music was given to me by, I can't think of the guy's name. But anyway, we'll do it next time. And thank you and have a good day. Bye-bye.